I will ask our next speaker, Chandra Sekhar DP, for his motivational talk on change is around the corner. Chandra Sekhar is CEO of Jain Group of Institute. So Chandra Sekhar, I hand over to you. Welcome to our conference. You can start.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and this is a great opportunity for me to engage with all of you. But at the outset, I would like to thank Krishna Praveen, the Executive Director, for getting me on this forum. I remember a few years ago, I was on this forum, HYDSPIN, at your physical conference, which was at the Ella Hotels in Gachibowli. And as we all know, that 2020 has been a roller coaster of a ride. Things have changed, and we have actually learned to do things in a different way altogether. Now, I'm completely aware that I'm speaking to a group of techies, I mean, a house full of techies, and that too at the fag end on a Saturday evening. Now, this is a very, very tricky situation to be in for more than one reason. But what is inspiring me, or what is motivating me to actually get on board and talk to you about this topic, change is around the corner, for the next 20 odd minutes, is the word change. The reason I want to talk about this is an opportunity for me to really tell you how things have changed at my side of the table. Now, for those of you who have already read about me, or at least know about my profile, I am in the education space. Now, when I say I'm in the education space, I run schools and colleges and universities. Now, I know prior to me, I heard a lot of technical jargons which were filled in the panel discussions. And to be very frank, let me make a confession. I am not very, very aware of a lot of those things which they were discussing. But the one thing I understood is, even in your context, change is common. So the common chord between both of us is change, because the last speaker at the panel discussion I heard, she said, change, things are changing so fast. That's the exact connotation she used around change. And none of us will deny what change has made to us in this life. I have consciously prevented myself from putting a presentation so that I can engage with all of you. So the whole format is going to be, I'll speak for next 5 to 10, 12 minutes, and then we can have some questions, because I'm eager to interact with you as well. So let me begin from the beginning. Let's say March 2020. March 2020, in our organization, that is schools, we got a circular from the government saying all schools, colleges will have to shut down for the next 15 days. This was mid of March. And later, it kept on increasing. And even to this day, as we speak, the schools have not been allowed to open up. Now, what happened on the other side? We had to continue to do our work for more than various reasons, because one, children, young children, and their learning cannot stop, because in education, as we all recognize, 1 year of no activity will take us back to 3 to 5 years, depending on what age the child is. So we cannot afford to stop learning. But then we had a challenge, and the challenge was, I had teachers, and this is the truth I'm telling you, I've told this in many forums. I had teachers in Hyderabad, it's not any rural place, or it's not any district or suburb, in the city of Hyderabad. I had a teacher and many teachers who did not even have a Gmail account. Yeah, you may wonder, is it even real? Yes, it is. My art teacher, my Hindi language teacher, they said, we don't need an email. We are happy with what we have. And not that we belong to some tier 2, tier 3 category of schools. We are an international school, and we have smart boards in our classrooms, but they never had a Gmail account or an email account. Now, in the next 20 days, that is March mid-March to April first week, all these teachers had their own Google Classrooms. Now look at the shift. No email to a Google Classroom. What drove this? That's the interesting part of the conversation. What drove this is to deliver last mile connectivity. That is, you cannot step out of the house, you cannot go back to the classroom, the students are not going to come to the classroom, the situation out there is totally hostile and unpredictable. We have no way of establishing connection with our learners. The only way is to get online. And thanks to their ability to adapt, really ability to adapt, that they all came on board. And today, let me tell you this, 7 months down the line, all our teachers are connecting with their children almost 24/7. When I say 24/7, because there are classes happening at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. in the night. And I'm sure all of you, many of you on this forum are parents, and you are witnessing the craziness at your home, where you have to actually juggle with multiple gadgets. Your children are having their online classrooms, you have to handle your work from home, and suddenly things have totally taken a new shape and feel. That drives us to the point, change was always there, will always be there, and in the future, change is going to stay here. We need to keep our antennas open to spot the change. See, in technology or in corporates, in companies, we have come across change multiple times. In fact, there are models to the effect of ADKR acronym, the Atkar model, which is about awareness to desire to knowledge to ability to reinforcement, or the famous the Kubler-Ross change curve, which talks about from shock to integration. So these are models. But if you really speak about life, I think life is a little more complex. So the one thing which I would like to leave you all today, if I can share that, is the ability to adapt. And to adapt, the single most important ingredient, this is my personal opinion, is perspective. Is the perspective with which we view reality around us. Now, when I say this, let me give you an example. All of us, let's take a break from corporate world, from technology, from the day-to-day stuff, and let's go to the area of sports. I'll give you two examples, one from the game of tennis and the other from cricket. When I start with tennis, I want to give you this example from the life of Martina Navratilova, a famous tennis player, well into her 40s or mid 40s. She was competing at the highest level, and at that point in time, when she was really 43, a press reporter questioned her, and the question was, how do you compete at this stage with your age? Because at that particular stage, it's touch and go. How do you do it? And her reply was fantastic. It's fabulous. She turned around to that reporter and she said, well, the tennis ball does not know my age. The tennis ball does not know my age. I mean, look at the example, or look at the reply, and look at the attitude, look at the perspective. The perspective of how we need to look at reality around us. So that's the whole idea. Now let me give you quickly another example. All of you are smart, intelligent people, and at the end of the day, I don't want to really beat around the bush, so I'm going to quickly get into the next example. Now this was from the game of cricket. Ricky Ponting, the Australian cricketer. You know his life's journey. His graph can be plotted on a nice curve, and it has ups and downs like a tide, and it's a fantastic journey. Now, when he was going through the depth in his form, the dip, where he was not able to get things right. He was not able to score runs. He was not able to win matches. He was not able to make it to the playing 11. He was sacked, and then he made his comeback, and a lot of things happened. But long story short, he went on to become the captain, the skipper of the Australian cricket team, and then they went and won 2, 3 World Cups. Now, again, press reporters went to them, and then they asked, "What happened? A while ago you were nowhere, you were not even making it to the playing 11, and now you are already there and you are leading the team. What changed? What did you do?" And Ricky Ponting says, when I was going through the bad patch and I used to go to the crease, take my guard and look around, I used to spot fielders. So I used to invariably hit to the fielder's hands and I used to get out and I could not score my runs. But now, when I go to the same crease, when I take my guard and when I start to play my game, I spot gaps. The fielders are still there, but my focus is on the gaps between the fielders. And that's where I have changed. I have turned around. I have turned around my game. Look at the perspective. Same person was looking at the fielders and was failing, but the same person changed his perspective a little, looked at the gaps, and then is now shining. Why these two examples? Is to drive home the point of perspective. It's all about us. Life really happens between these two years. It's the 6 inches which matters. We don't live in duplexes, we don't live in bungalows, we don't live in villas, we don't live in apartments. We live here. There is no congestion here as long as we get the perspective right. But the problem is, when we have clutter, we cannot get the perspective. So if I really have to leave you all with one important message at the end of the day on a Saturday evening when we are talking change is around the corner, keep your glasses of perspective always on. It's all about how you look. We have all grown up listening to stories like, is the glass half full or is it half empty? And now the latest story of the hare and the tortoise, where partnership, teamwork is taught using the same story, where when I was growing up and when you were growing up, we were taught slow and steady wins the race. Same story, the different moral because of the perspective. So friends, what I would really talk about here is change is always happening. Yes, I agree with the previous panel. Pace of change has increased tremendously. But you know what? You're all technological people. Even that pace cannot overtake the speed at which you can see things. I mean, look at it. Every morning you come out and you look at the sun. We all know the physical distance between the sun and us is some millions of miles. But at a glance, you can actually look at the sun. Yeah, with your glares on, you can actually stare back at the sun. Look at the pace with which your vision can transform your reality. So no gigabyte, no technological revolution has reached that speed that it can overtake your speed of vision. So with that self-belief, with that confidence about you and your ability to handle change, I think you can really welcome change as it comes. We've all gone through that curve in this year itself. When it came initially, it was a shock, but today we have integrated pandemic into our life. So we know how to live with it, we know how to live around it, and we know how to live in spite of it. So that's the spirit. So this is really what I would like to convey to you. Thank you once again for your patient listening, but I would really enjoy and want to engage with you with some questions if you have any. But the fact you need to remember is change is always around the corner, and the best way to handle change is to put on your perspective glasses on. It's the way you see it which matters. Thank you.
Well, colleagues, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. I will read out to Chandrasekhar. It was a very great talk, Chandrasekhar. We have a lot of comments appreciating that. It's really very inspiring, and the examples were really good. How
Thank you
perspective
so
can
much.
really change, from failure to the win. Yeah, it's very good.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
so we
think
have a question from Atika. What is the best approach to adapt to change?
that's a great question, and I would really want to answer it in simple 3 steps. The first step for adapting to change is integrate it with your life. Okay. In fact, I would like to give you this 3C approach: C, C, and C. The first one is chaotic. So when change really comes to your life, it is going to be creating chaos. So you are not going to be comfortable with it. So you got to integrate that chaotic thing to your life. Accept it, embrace it, welcome it. It's not easy. It's easier said than done, but it's not easy. But then with the perspective, you can do it. Have an understanding that yes, it's going to be different. So let me take it slow. So that is the first thing. The second thing is, you have to really look at deciding certain things. So what I
Mhm.
mean by deciding certain things is the way you used to do before cannot really happen or even now, because things have changed. The chaos has created that thing. So you make those decisions, and that is the stage where it is commotion, where you know a particular way to do things, you're habituated and you're used to doing things, and now the new thing is forcing on you, and there is a commotion between the new way and the old way, new normal and the old normal. That's the commotion stage. So first is the chaotic stage, second is the commotion stage, and the third is the consolidation stage. Consolidation stage is, that's when the filtration really happens, where you know that this is no more going to be happening or useful, and I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to adapt to this new way of doing things. So chaos, commotion, and consolidation, that's the simple way to handle change, in my opinion.
Mhm. Okay, so we have one more question. What are the usual hindrances from people adapting the perspective had from affecting change?
I think it's a combination of two things. Great question again. One is attitude and behavior, that is totally internal, the way we look at it, and the self-belief, and the doubt actually, that can I handle this? Can we handle this?
Yeah.
So that self-doubt gets projected in more than one way outside. That's one
Mhm.
aspect to it. And the second aspect to it is the circumstances, the environment, because we all live in a place where we are judged. We are judged
Yeah.
for our results, we are judged for our speed, we are judged for our way of doing things. Now because of that speed and by that environment, we try to say, okay, chuck it, let's go with the old known way rather than going with the new experimental way, because we want to be there one among the other rather than trying to be experimenting in front of others. So that's the
Mhm.
real combination. One is behavior, attitude, and the second is the environment.
Yeah, I think continuing with that, one more question is changing a person's belief and value. Can you share some insight?
In my opinion, beliefs are much easier to change, because I feel think of belief like a tablet. Belief is
Mhm.
like a tablet which has an expiry date. Now, suddenly something happens, that belief may not work. For
Yeah.
example, let's give you, we always believed that conferences, programs are always only in the physical world. You need a banquet hall,
Yeah.
you need a hotel, and then we need to go sit there, have a cocktail, have some nice dinner, and have enjoy. But today, that belief has lived out its time. It's
Yeah.
expired. Now the things have changed. But values are not like that. Values do not have an expiry date. In fact, values can be thought like a metaphor. And when I say values change only in two scenarios. One, either something dramatic happens in your life, or two, something traumatic happens in your life. So for example, I believed honesty is the best policy. But because of being honest, I had to face the brunt of the situation where I completely were bulldozed by people, a group of dishonest people. Okay,
Yeah,
I might be at the losing end right now, but then somewhere inside me, I start losing the value of being honest.
yeah.
I'll say, no, this doesn't work. This, and that cannot be treated as expiry date. It will not expire. Somewhere deep down, you still want to be honest, but the circumstances has made you feel that that won't work. So values will change only very rarely, but beliefs are more like an expiry date.
Okay, so is a question from Kalyan. What should we keep constant to adopt the change, and what should we change to adopt the changes?
Wow.
I mean, it is little bit tricky. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So let's break it up. Let's take part by part. The first
yeah,
part says, what should we keep constant to adopt to change? I think what
yeah,
you need to keep constant is your perspective. Perspective to look at things in reality. And the
yeah.
second part, we what should we change to adopt the changes? Change your rigidity. Okay, tell yourself that I am flexible. I am
Mm,
flexible. I am flexible. So because you need to stop being rigid. The minute you stop being rigid, you get a new perspective. So in fact, Steve Jobs very famously said, he said, whatever you think the opposite first. So the minute you ask a question and the first answer you get, you say, I'm not going to give that out as an answer. Let me park it aside and think of what next, what next, what next. So that's an ability to be flexible rather than rigid.
mhm. Okay. Rajesh has a question. How to manage change fast without impacting current environment?
I think change management has no fixed formula because it has multiple variables. First variable is what's the desired output you want with the new change. Second variable
Mm,
is the number of people who are involved and who are directly or indirectly affected by this particular change. And the third one is, again, going back to your beliefs and your values, how those things are going to be making a play in this entire change management, because human behavior is completely a different ball game. It's not a machine learning kind of a thing. It's about
not predictable.
yeah, it's predictable to some extent, but it's
Yeah.
irrational.
Mm,
So managing change in a fast environment is the only thing which will really survive. Like, let me take go back to the COVID example in the school scenario. We had more than what 48 teachers who had to literally get on board with their online classes and then talk. And today, as I speak, 723 classes happens on a daily basis. Now,
yeah.
imagine my principal's fate. She has to get into the class to just monitor it. She may not be able to stay there for a long time, but she has some 7 screens in front of her and she's getting in, getting out, getting in, getting out of different classrooms. Now, if you say, how do you manage change? I think it's the goal that will drive you towards change. The number of people increases, then it becomes that much more difficult. Then you need a process. You need checks and balances so that the change management can be measured.
So there is one more question from Deepak. What is your opinion on Elon Musk's new notion? Do not spend much time on PowerPoint and meetings, but on the product. And everywhere there is a uh, MBAization,
Yeah.
MBAization. Yeah. Does this hint a change in our field and drive us more technology rather than spending hours of time in planning?
That's interesting. Yeah, actually, right. Because I do teach in MBA schools, business schools, but I learn more from my school children, from my grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12 students. Let me tell you this. I don't know about Elon Musk's principles, but I know one thing. Today's millennials, today's Gen Z students, they don't enjoy PowerPoints. They don't like you because they say information is available. I get the best of the best animation, best of the best PDFs, best of the best PowerPoints available on internet in free source. I don't care about animations and graphics. What I care about is contextualization of the content. There is content, but is that content really works in my context? That's the whole thing. So I think that is more and more going up in the corporate ladder as well, because these are the people who are going to come into the workforce sooner or later. So PPT, we all know there were memes which were running around maybe 5-7 years ago, death by PowerPoint. So we cannot really look at PowerPoint as the one-stop solution for driving home a point. But yes, more and more alternative ways of reaching the message is coming up. Videos are a good example. Voice notes, podcasts, these are some of the things which are really come up very well. In fact, let me tell you, there are students in our own environment in college and in schools where they don't prefer, because I mean, I'm into education, so I want to take this detour and tell you there are four kind of learners: visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, okay, and then symbiotic learners where they need a little bit of everything. So VAKS. Now your PowerPoint can only cater to your visual learners, not to your auditory or your kinesthetic or the symbiotic learners. So we need to be very careful in driving home the point. And in the workplace, even in the teams, you have people coming from different backgrounds. There may be a visual learner in your team, there may be an auditory guy, and there may be a kinesthetic person. So how are you going to cater to them? So maybe Elon Musk has got that point right when he says that PowerPoint is not the only way to go forward.
That's very true. There is one more question. Suppose you're trying to adapt to change, but there are a lot of difficulties and time-taking process. How to stay focused in such scenario?
Okay, so change adaptation is definitely time taking. Now, let me tell you this before even I attempt to answer that. See, whenever we measure anything, at least these softer aspects of life, that is adaptation, ability, we should always measure with ourselves. That is your previous performance vis-a-vis your current performance, your current performance vis-a-vis your next performance.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, if I start measuring my pace, my speed with your speed, definitely one of us is going to get demotivated.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely one of us is going to feel bad, because I cannot match your pace or you cannot match my pace all the time in every aspect. So with that as a foundation, now let me attempt this question. The question here is, you're trying to adapt to change, but if there are a lot of difficulties and time taking process, how to stay focused in such a scenario? I think the answer to this is, again, look at the end result. Begin with the end in mind. What is that you want to achieve? If I really want to achieve something which is worth its weight in gold, then the pain or the process or even the hurdles will not really matter, because your spirit will overcome that. But if you don't attach that worth to the desire, to the end result, then even, I mean, moving this cup of tea from this table to that table just because that person does not want to come here may look like a painful thing.
Yeah.
But if your end result is, I want to serve that person and see that smile on that person's face, then you don't mind walking with that cup maybe another 10 steps.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So another interesting question is, how do you see students embracing the new norm?
Okay, so this is something which I'm used to answer. So the graph is inversely proportional. When I say inversely proportional, my senior grade students, that is 12th, 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, higher the grade, more is the ability to enjoy online classes, and lower the
Mm.
grade, less is the ability. And when I say inversely proportional, higher the lower the grade, their resistance to the online classes is higher.
Okay.
So my pre-primary children, my primary children, they are not able to handle this. They think, what the hell is happening? In fact, I keep saying this. Our kids are going through a crisis within a
Yeah.
crisis. We are all going through pandemic. That's a big crisis the globe is taking care of. But then the child has to handle this. One, the child is wondering why mother and father are always around.
Yeah.
The child is not, at least in cities, the child was not used to. They had friends, they had school, they had a lot of other things. Now it's four walls. It's just that. So that is another thing. Second thing is the child cannot meet the friends, and nobody is able to explain and give a valid reason for a
Right.
7-year-old boy or a girl as to why the child cannot touch the other friend.
Yeah.
Because the child cannot understand. It's like, no, why are you stopping me? This is the real problem. Children are getting depressed, mentally disturbed, so a lot of issues are happening. But we can only make the most of what is there. So we have given a lot of flexibility. But at the end of the day, I must always salute the teachers for making it easier for the children and the parents, both mom and dad, for being there by their side. I know of parents who have actually taken a break from their workplace but giving time to their children because this does not or this cannot stop.
Okay. Yeah, that is good. So let us take the last question. There
Yeah.
is a lot of information available nowadays in various forms over internet. How do how to integrate this information and process it? Do you think there needs to be some kind of regulation on information sharing?
I think I partly answered it earlier, but I will repeat that contextualization of content becomes the most important thing. I mean, let me tell you this: we all are victims of social media. We all are students of WhatsApp University.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Anand Mahindra calls it, WhatsApp Wonder Walks. So we all keep
Yeah.
getting lot of information, uh, some real, some true, but majority fake. But at the end of the day, we are victims of it. Now, if that information is in my context, if that information is in my scenario, then that information is valuable. Otherwise, what is the worth of that information? So
Yeah.
the point here is we have information and we have information overload, agreed, but we need people who can contextualize the information and tell you how much is enough. And that's the role adults have to play around adults, not about children. Because I'll tell you, for some odd reason, today's teenagers and today's children know what they really want. They know exactly what they want. They don't follow 100 people, they don't like 100 people's posts. No, they know exactly what they want, and rest is actually crap for them.
Yeah.
We have to make that distinction. So I think contextualization of the content becomes very, very, very important for us. And coming to regulation, I think yes, there is need of regulation, not for information, because nobody can stop creation of content. What we need regulation is for security, data security, privacy issues. I think that is very important because that is going to be the differentiator between uh, a society with a lot of harmonious coexistence and a society with jealousy, envy, and
Yeah.
false pride. I think that's the creation, the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you, Chandrasekhar. I think this was a very good explanation of how, important for us is to, adopt to change and how we can stay focused, how we need to control the perspective. This was very nice. So I thank you for this session. Uh, Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure again. And thanks once again for giving me this opportunity, and all the very best for the next day as well as the rest of the year forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.